Hi everyone, Adrian Groenewald. Of course, as usual, welcome to Global Leadership Platform. It's wonderful to be with you. And of course, this is our Global Leadership Conversation 2. Last year we had 1. We're now in our second round all over the world, hopefully on every continent. We speak to experts and influencers. And the difference this year is it is also under the banner of 2020 DAL, which is the 2020 Decade of Authentic Leadership. We are hoping that we can somehow globally unite people around the vision of expediting the emergence of authentic leaders and leadership in order to somehow eradicate or turn around the tide on weak, toxic, and incompetent leadership. All the challenges we face all over the world are probably as a direct or indirect result of weak, toxic, or incompetent leadership, or unauthentic leadership, selfish leadership. And we know that this is the case based on Global Leadership Conversation 1 that we did last year. So I'm interviewing experts and influencers all over the world. And with me today is Roger Harrop, all the way from Oxford in the UK. He is the CEO expert. And with his partner, they travel the world talking to leaders of small, medium, and very large organizations on how to be more profitable and successful. And leadership is a very big part of that. He's an award-winning motivational growth speaker, and it's great to have you with us, Roger.
Lovely to be with you, Adrian.
Well, as the snow starts falling on your side and as the heat rises here on my side here next to Kruger, let's get going with the conversation. First of all, we just want to make sure we're on the same page as what you are. How would you describe to us or define what an authentic leader is, or what is authentic leadership in a nutshell?
I guess the first thing I would say is that an authentic leader exhibits personal authority rather than positional authority. It's not about the fact that you're sitting behind the desk or got a chair or got a name on your door. It's that personal authority. Secondly, they are crystal clear about the purpose of the team they run, whatever sort of team that might be. It might be a company, it might be a charity, it might be a football team, whatever it is, they are crystal clear about what the purpose is and what success looks like. And finally, they are clear about the vision of how they're going to get from here to there.
Okay, excellent. Now, question 2 is, based on that definition, I'm assuming you believe that if we're going to turn the tide on weak, toxic, and incompetent leadership, or if we want to expedite the emergence of authentic leaders, said in a more positive way, that is the kind of leader we need in the world today. So you believe?
No question. Okay. No question. Absolutely everywhere, we need that sort of leader.
Tell me, how big is the gap between that kind of leader and what we actually see out there on a day-to-day basis?
I think you know the answer as well as I do, Adrian. It's massive. It's massive. You know, if you start with politicians, you know, unfortunately, everything to do with the structure of politics means that doesn't happen. Generally, it doesn't happen because they're not even selecting a team that is there that they trust. You know, they're always assuming a member of their team is trying to put a knife in their back. If you've got that sort of toxic situation, then authentic leadership and successful teamwork, it seems to me, is almost impossible unless I've missed something.
Yeah, I mean, authentic speaks to itself in a way, doesn't it? I do what I say I'm going to do, and very few politicians ever deliver on what they say they're going to do. I think in the corporate environment, perhaps we could say the same. There's so much pressure on CEOs and leaders to perform according to market promise, and the world is so dynamic that they don't know what's going to hit them, and they end up not delivering on those promises either. So overall, there's just a breakdown of authentic leadership and trust in leaders and all of those things that we need so desperately. So I hear what you're saying. So personal authority as opposed to positional authority, crystal clear about the team's vision for that organization, whatever the organization is. And they are clear about the vision on how they're going to get there. Now, if you look at this kind of leadership, just take us through a principle or a process or a tip. Please put on your trainer, coach, speaker hat for a moment and let's empower people a little bit more in this interview by sharing a principle that they can implement as leaders to be more like this kind of person that you just defined.
Yeah. You know, for 25 years, I was a tutor with what's probably Europe's leading experiential leadership program. And basically, I would have usually about 8, 9, 10 people who'd never met each other before in a room for 5 days. And my job was to be honest, to be as quiet as possible, to sit in the corner and observe and guide and so on. And basically, during those 5 days, those people, and they were mainly business people, but included politicians. I have had bishops from the Church of England. I've had all kinds of people in my groups. And during that 5 days, they would go through a whole series of projects. Some were cerebral projects, some were physical projects, and they'd take turns at leading and indeed at following. And just from my observation of that, let alone all the other things that I've done, one of the things that was clear to me is the vast majority of us assume that when we're a leader, our job is to sort of know everything, to get down there in the detail, in the mud and the bullets, and understand everything and tell people what to do, broadly speaking. And of course, that is not the case. And the great thing about that 5-day program was, usually it was about the Wednesday or the Thursday, whatever group I was with of their own volition would suddenly work that out and say, this isn't the way to do it. And what I would say to, anyone listening to this, watching this is, the next time you have got some sort of major problem, let's say something that needs dealing with, instead of doing perhaps what you might have automatically done, which is, to get your team together, to talk about the options, and then for you to say, well, this is what we're going to do. Instead of doing that, the thing to do, is to take the task, the project, whatever it is, and put it into your team without you. Put it in the middle of your team, and then you stand back and you then give them the very simple metrics, which are, I need you to look at this. You have got until this time to come back to me, please, with the various alternatives we've got as to how we go forward. You then stand back and you, for want of a better term, you observe. But actually what you're doing is you're thinking about the strategy, you're seeing the ways that things go, and then they come back to you, and then you can tease out the various options and so on. Mm-hmm. So please, the exercise, please, is the next time you have that, the very next one. It might be tomorrow morning, it might be next week or next month. The next time you have some sort of project, say, the first thing you've got to say to yourself is, I trust my people. And that's very difficult because we know our people never do things as well as we do. But I trust my people. Get them together and say, there is the task. There is what I'd like you to look at. Please come back by this time to me with all the options, and then we're going to decide what we're going to do. Just do that. It is extremely hard. You've got to sit on your hands. You've got to keep your mouth shut, all those sorts of things. It's extremely hard to do, but I promise you, you will never look back.
Okay, so it's interesting if you sit in an executive team session, so the executives having a weekly or monthly all-day executive meeting about the entire massive business.
Yeah.
How much space is there in that kind of environment, as opposed to just in an everyday scenario, a problem comes up, you call a few team members and you say, guys, please go through this, and by tomorrow, 4 o'clock perhaps, just come with some solutions and options. You go analyze it and look at it, and then come tell me what you think. In an executive meeting, you have back and forth the whole time, and you often have the CEO putting on his or her hat and giving solutions and giving input. Do you think that even there, in the heat of a meeting, there is a way of still letting your team come with more solution than yourself?
I think you've really put your finger on it there, Adrian. I've been involved in any number of board meetings. I've been chairman of any number of boards, of business boards, and on charities as well. And the fundamental is the job of that board meeting, that executive meeting, is to be at a strategic level. And 99.5 times out of 100, it is not. Just as an example, there was I was chairman of a business where, when I first joined, the monthly pack that was sent to me, board meeting pack, was generally 80 to 90 pages. That is complete nonsense. No one, absolutely no one, is going to read 80 or 90 pages, nor should they need to. You know, you should have a minimum of information, which is only touching on the key things that need talking about, that need teasing out, with recommendations, just like I was saying, about the direction, the options we've got. And therefore, in that meeting, you should be talking at a strategic level because you've already had your teams do this other stuff. But that isn't what generally happens, in my experience. And if I could just add something to that, you know, I was going to say in business, I mean, it's obviously business I focus on, but I think it's more general than that. I think that is now much more important than it ever was before, that leaders need to be spending a significant amount of time, as I would put it, staying up there in the helicopter, getting up there and looking at the big picture, because things are changing so quickly. Technology is changing at eye-watering speeds. Markets are changing. People are changing. You know, we love to talk about the millennials being totally different, but everything is happening much faster than it did before. And if you as the leader are not up there most of your time in the helicopter, no one else is going to be. And that means that you're not looking over the horizon, and you can be caught out very quickly with one of these major changes that's happening.
Roger, good advice. Thank you. Okay, now on a broader scale, what else can or should we be doing as a society to expedite the emergence of authentic leaders, the kind of leader you described earlier?
Gosh, that's a really difficult one, but let me answer from a business perspective, because as I say, that's my specialism. And one of the problems starts with education at every level. You know, business schools and I don't get on because business schools seem to be in the business of making business complex. And you know, my partner, business partner Juanita, and I are in the business of making business simple. And, you know, people, as it were, don't like that. They like to think that things have to be complex, that you need to have, you know, a PhD and letters after your name to do anything. You know, it's nonsense. And it's, can I, if you don't mind, just quote a little example. I talk a bit in one of, or we talk a bit in one of our masterclasses that we run around the world. We talk about technology and using latest technology. And we quote something really mundane. You know, the QR code, that funny little thing that doesn't cost anything. And most people you talk to, certainly in business, go, oh, well, we tried that. It's for sales and marketing, but didn't do very much. And what we say to people is, you know, I think this is lovely. In Japan, you know, dementia patients go walkabout like they do everywhere in the world, and they get confused and forget where they are. So what they're doing in Japan these days is once every 3 weeks, they're super gluing a little QR code onto the thumb of each of their patients. They've gone out to all the local people and said, you know, if you see somebody wandering about a bit distressed, use your phone, because every phone has got a QR reader. Just on their thumb, that'll give you the address. Please bring them home. Now, that for me is one of the ways in which we should be using technology, and anyone can be using that technology. And the question I am asking leaders is, who in your organization are you empowering to come up with that sort of stuff? Because that's your job as a leader. You need an enterprise culture where, you know, to be grand, product developments don't come through a whole hierarchy of routine. Anyone is empowered to come up with an idea. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Because we're surrounded by all this stuff, but it has to come from the leader. And it has to mean the leader is, number one, trusting people beneath them. Secondly, empowering them. And then listening. And those 3 skills are not ones that we traditionally see in leaders. And somehow, right from the beginning of education all the way through secondary and tertiary education, we need people to be getting that message that leadership is not about being very, very clever. It's not about having letters after your name. It's not about knowing all the detail. It's actually about having an attitude, which is trusting the people under you. And there's a load of other things that go with that, which is the whole business of recruitment of teams, to be honest, where simply not enough time is spent on your most important resource, making sure that in your team, you don't just have a mixture of, as it were, technical skills. You also have a mixture of behavioral, I can't speak today, sorry, behavioral competencies as well. Those things need a lot of work and a lot of effort. And I'm afraid I have to say to you, HR, people don't necessarily help because they often are in the business of trying to make sure that they are seen to be extremely important, and therefore all that gets made more complex. It doesn't have to be complex.
It's all about simplicity, isn't it? Finally, Roger, really some good insights there. You've said somewhat in between all your comments what you do as a business or as an individual, but maybe just close off with a few seconds telling us what you as a person and your partner, your business are doing to help us with this vision of expediting authentic leaders across the globe in the next decade. To close the gap.
Absolutely. So Juanita Voster, based in Centurion, and I, we call ourselves the CEO experts, and we give speeches, keynote speeches. We run masterclasses, and we work in company. Those are for people running business or involved in running business, and I include charities and not-for-profits in that, from the very smallest startup all the way through. We've worked with some of the largest corporates in the world. We've worked with something like 30,000 business leaders now in 49 countries. And it won't surprise you to know that what we see are the same problems everywhere. Nothing's new in the world. But that's what we do. And we are in the business of making business simple. And we own the phrase staying in the helicopter, because that's basically the preface to everything we do. Get up there in that helicopter, please, Mr. or Ms. Leader. Get up there in the helicopter and spend most of your time up there in the helicopter looking at that big picture, looking over the horizon. Now, there are occasions when you have to land it and get in the detail. Of course there are. But it's a lot less often than you think it is. And that's really what we do. And, you know, the payback for us is, if I may, is when you get I got an email just last week from someone who I don't remember. And he said, I attended a masterclass of yours a year ago. We've just had a record year in our business. I just wanted to say thank you. That's down to you. And, you know, that's all I want to hear. It's obviously untrue. That's not the case. But maybe we just helped release him from the detail that he felt he had to be in when, in fact, he didn't.
Roger Harrop, thank you so much for your time and for joining us on our Global Leadership Conversation 2 as part of our #2020 DAL, Decade of Authentic Leadership Vision. And thank you for what you're doing out there. We look forward to sharing this interview with leaders all over the world, and certainly getting it onto our Global Leadership Platform app, which I'm going to show you now. And we appreciate you for giving us some of your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, Adrian.